My 9-year-old kid stared at the family tree hanging in my parents' hallway and asked, "Why aren't we on it?" My mom smiled tightly and said, "Let's not get into that right now." There were 43 names, but not us. I didn't shout. I acted. 2 hours later, their lives started to fall apart. My son stood in front of the family tree and said, "Why aren't we on it?" I looked up. He was right. There were 43 names on that thing, perfectly organized and framed like it was some treasured artifact. Every cousin, every spouse, every child. My brother, his ex-wife, their 3 kids. My parents, my uncles, even a few second cousins. Some I hadn't seen in a decade. But not me. Not my husband. Not my son. I didn't say a word. I just stared at it. My mom must have heard us from the kitchen because she came into the hallway, wiped her hands with a dish towel, glanced at the tree, then at me. Then she gave that tight little smile she always used when she knew she was caught in something. "Let's not get into that right now." And she walked off. She didn't explain. Didn't apologize. Didn't seem surprised either. Like this had come up before. Like she'd rehearsed that line. Like she'd hoped I'd never come home long enough to notice. I stood there, still staring, while my son tilted his head like he was trying to solve a puzzle that didn't make sense. I put a hand on his shoulder and said we'd talk later. He shrugged and ran back to the living room, where my dad was watching a college football game like none of this existed. But for me, that moment split something wide open. Not because I didn't already know how they operated, I did. I'd spent the last decade handing them lifelines. Helping them behind the scenes so they wouldn't embarrass themselves. I paid off their mortgage when they were 2 weeks away from foreclosure. I covered my brother's rehab stay after they told me they'd already done enough for him. I bought them a new car when the old one died and they couldn't qualify for a loan. I did all that without asking for credit. I just didn't want to see them fall apart. And still, I wasn't on the tree. Not even in the corner. That tree was more than a decoration. It was a message. A message they were comfortable hanging in the center of their home, right across from the front door where every guest would see it. A message that we didn't count. That we never had. I didn't get angry. I didn't call her out. I didn't cry. I just decided right then that I was done being the safety net. By the time dinner ended, I had already sent a few texts. I didn't slam doors or make speeches. I didn't threaten. I just started pulling the threads quietly, the ones they didn't even know I controlled. 2 days later, the unraveling began. We stayed the night. I didn't want to, but leaving too quickly would have tipped my hand. I needed them relaxed, comfortable. I needed them to believe I hadn't noticed, or at least that I didn't care. That was always easier for them, thinking I'd let things go like I always had. But in the background, I was already moving. At midnight, when everyone was asleep, I stepped outside and made a call. Short and simple. I asked my attorney to send the paperwork first thing Monday. We'd discussed it months ago, actually, not because I was planning anything at the time, but because she'd raised a good question during a dinner we had. She said, "You ever think about what happens if your parents default again? You've got legal exposure, Melissa. You've tied yourself too tightly to people who don't respect boundaries." I told her I'd think about it. Now I had my answer. That house. The one I bought for them after the bank had already scheduled the auction? I never told them I kept the deed in my name. They assumed because I said it was theirs, again, that I meant legally. I didn't. I meant I wasn't going to evict them. Back then I thought that made me generous. Now I saw what it really made me, stupid. I hadn't just been excluded from the family tree. I'd been erased. My own mother had printed and framed a version of history where I didn't exist. So I started writing a new one. Monday morning, the notice was delivered by Courier. My parents didn't mention it, probably because they didn't understand it. It looked like routine paperwork, a title adjustment, an update to property documentation. But it was the first step toward taking full legal control of their house. That same day, I called the insurance company and updated the policy, removing my father from all communication and billing access. He'd only learned how to use the online portal 2 months ago, after I helped him reset his password. That access was gone now. Then I contacted the bank. Not theirs. Mine. The one where I'd opened a joint emergency fund for them years ago without ever telling them I was the only one funding it. It had over $30,000 in it. I closed the account. That afternoon my brother called me. He said Dad was panicking because his credit card got declined at the gas station and he couldn't reach their accountant. I told him I had no idea what was going on, that maybe Dad should ask the family for help. Your family, he said. I didn't respond. Let him sit with that silence. Let him think about the tree. I gave them 2 more days. Watched from a distance as they called around, scrambled to get in touch with people who didn't owe them anything. It turns out being charming only gets you so far when the bills hit. On Thursday morning, my mom finally called me. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't mention the tree. She went straight to the point. Something's going on with the house. Why are we getting these letters? I told her the truth. Because it's not your house. And for the first time in my adult life, I hung up on her. After I hung up, I waited. I knew what was coming next. Not even 15 minutes passed before my dad called. I didn't answer. Then my brother. Same thing. Voicemail after voicemail, texts piling up like it was a crisis. And to them it was. Because for the first time they couldn't fix this with guilt or sweet talking. No soft threats, no casual manipulation, no retelling of how much they'd sacrificed for me. They had nothing to stand on. I'd removed every rope they used to climb out of their own messes. And they were falling fast. By the weekend, the bank had sent the second notice. Formal, unmistakable. The deed was being transferred into a trust. My trust. And the house was now protected under a different legal structure. Which meant if they tried to take out another line of credit against it, it wouldn't go through. If they defaulted on anything else, the house wouldn't be seized. And they had no access to change it. They were still living in it. But it no longer belonged to them. My mother finally sent a message I'll never forget. She said, "Why are you doing this? We're your parents." And in that moment I felt nothing. Not rage, not regret, just clarity. Because that question made everything clear. She still didn't get it. She still believed that the word parents was supposed to be enough. Like biology gave them a lifelong pass to treat me however they wanted, as long as they occasionally called on birthdays and remembered my son's name. I didn't reply. Instead, I sat down and wrote a letter. Not to them. To the attorney I'd hired years ago to help me manage my business finances. I told her to finalize the transition plan. Not just for the house but for the funds I'd set aside. I'd once planned to give my parents an informal stipend in retirement. Not anymore. That money was now being redirected to a scholarship fund, in my name, for women starting businesses with zero family support. Fitting, I thought. That week my parents called my husband. He didn't answer either. They sent him a long email. Something about betrayal, about being blindsided, about me being unwell. He showed it to me, asked if I wanted to respond. I told him no. Let them think what they want. I had nothing left to explain. We told our son the truth in simple terms. That sometimes people in your family don't treat you like family. And when that happens, you don't keep letting them hurt you just because they share your last name. He nodded. Then he said something I hadn't expected. Grandma and Grandpa aren't really our family, are they? I didn't answer. But deep down I knew he was right. 2 weeks later I got a text from my cousin Aaron. Just a single line. "What's going on with your parents? Uncle Doug says they might lose the house." I didn't reply right away. I let her wonder the same way I had wondered years ago when none of them reached out while I was handling everything in silence. When I was the quiet fixer behind the scenes, the invisible backbone holding their perfect little family image together. But now the cracks were public. They'd already tried to sell some of their furniture online. The fancy stuff I helped them buy after their bankruptcy. The dining set they never let the grandkids touch. The living room rug they bragged about like it was a family heirloom. I saw it all listed for cheap under a burner account, but the photos were obviously their house. It didn't take much to figure it out. Then came the worst move they could make. They called my in-laws. That's how I knew they were truly desperate. My husband's parents had always been warm, kind, and generous. The type who hosted holidays with extra plates just in case, who remembered anniversaries that weren't even theirs. They treated me like a daughter from day one. My mother hated that. But that didn't stop her from calling them and pretending to be concerned for me. She said I was acting unstable. That I'd cut everyone off without reason. That maybe they should talk to me, get me to calm down, help us reconnect. My mother-in-law called me right after. She didn't ask if it was true. She just said one thing. "We have your back. No matter what." That call did something to me. It confirmed what I already knew deep down but hadn't said aloud until then. My real family wasn't the one I was born into. It was the one I built. And that changed everything. That night, I logged into the shared drive where I'd saved over a decade's worth of receipts, emails, wire transfers, and contracts. Everything I'd done for my parents financially, all documented and time-stamped. It had just been for my records back when I thought I might need to show it someday. That day had come. I sent it all to my attorney. Told her to prepare a file, just in case my parents tried to drag this into court. Because I knew how they operated. If they couldn't guilt me back into submission, they'd try to flip the story. Make me the aggressor. Say I stole from them. That I manipulated them. That I left them with nothing. But I wasn't scared of them anymore. Let them try. I didn't hear from them for the rest of the week. Then my brother called again from a new number. He left a voicemail this time. It was short. Just him saying, "You went too far, Mel." I deleted it without listening to the rest. If anything, I hadn't gone far enough. The next time I saw my parents' names, it wasn't on a missed call or in my inbox. It was in a legal notice. They had filed a petition, not to sue me but to challenge the ownership structure of the house. Their claim was that I'd misled them when I bought it. That it was meant to be theirs. That I had reversed the arrangement unfairly and now they were at risk of homelessness. I laughed when I read it. Not because it was funny but because it was so perfectly them, twisting the story into one where they were the victims. They forgot, conveniently, that they'd called me crying for help when the house was days from auction. That I paid for it in full. That I hired contractors to repair it. That I handled all the paperwork while they played helpless. That I told them it would be in my name for now, just until they got back on their feet. They never got back on their feet. They just got comfortable. My attorney wasn't worried. The deed was clean. The paper trail was flawless. The case was dismissed within 10 days. But what mattered wasn't the court result. It was the silence that followed. Total silence. No more calls. No more emails. No apology. No acknowledgement of what they'd tried to do. It was like they hoped we'd all forget. Like they could outweigh the damage and maybe I'd get nostalgic or soft enough to come back around. They didn't know I was already gone. That month I made it official. I rewrote my will, removed them entirely from any financial control, and assigned power of attorney to my husband. Then I opened a new trust in our son's name. I even added my in-laws to the emergency plan. If anything happened to me or my husband, they'd be the ones raising our child. Not my parents. Never again. In October I heard from Erin again. She said she saw my mom working at a local boutique. Part-time. Minimum wage. It wasn't pity I felt. It wasn't satisfaction either. It was something simpler. Closure. Because I'd spent my whole life being the solution to their messes. And now, watching them finally clean up their own, slowly, publicly, without my help, it was the first time I truly felt free. My son asked about them once more. Just once. Are they still mad? I said, I don't know. And I don't care. He nodded like that made sense. And that was the end of it. It's been a year now. A full year since I cut the cord. No calls on my birthday. No last-ditch letters. No fake emergencies designed to pull me back in. Just silence. I don't think they know what to do with it. Maybe they still think I'm bluffing. That at some point I'll call and say I miss them or that I overreacted. But that version of me is gone. They buried her the day they hung that tree on the wall without my name. I heard through a neighbor, someone I still talk to back home, that the house is falling apart again. Shingles missing from the roof. Fence rotting. Grass overgrown. The porch lights broken. Just like it was before I bailed them out the first time. I wonder if they expect me to step in again. I wonder if they sit at the kitchen table waiting for my number to light up on their phone. It won't. They could sell the house and downsize. But that would mean admitting they need to change. They'd rather hold on to something they think they deserve, even if it's crumbling around them. That part of them never changed. But everything else did. My son doesn't ask about them anymore. He's focused on soccer and school and the giant Lego set my in-laws got him last Christmas. They show up for him. Every birthday, every school event, every time he calls just to say hi. And they don't do it to score points, they do it because they care. It's quiet, consistent love. The kind I used to wish for from my own parents but never got. One night last month my husband and I were cleaning out the attic. He found a box labeled family stuff. Inside were old photos, letters, a few cards from my parents when I was younger. He handed me one without saying anything. It was a birthday card from when I turned 12. My mom had written, "Don't grow up too fast. We still need our little helper." I read it twice. Then I tossed it back in the box, closed the lid and said, "We can get rid of this." I didn't feel sad. I felt clean. like someone who had finally stopped carrying things that weren't hers to hold. People think revenge has to be loud, explosive. But this wasn't that. I didn't burn anything down. I just walked away and let them face what they'd built, or rather what they'd failed to build. A version of family that only worked when I was the one making the effort. No. I spend holidays with people who don't ask me for money, who don't see me as a tool, who don't erase me from the walls of their home. I have peace. My son has examples of love that don't come with strings. And when I walk past our own framed family photo in the hallway, just the three of us smiling on the beach last summer, I don't feel like something's missing. I feel like I'm finally home.